Can you all hear me without the mic?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a poem, but I wrote this the other day, and it's about an artist he's died. I looked him up on Google, and he lived in an arts colony called Ajijic in Mexico. And I met him. I won't say I had the pleasure of meeting him, as you will find out. It's called John K. Peterson of Ajijic. In 1975, I rented my flat out to a doctor with his lover and took off for America and Mexico, leading a nomadic life for a year. I had bought an amazing mileage ticket that was to the furthest point, Los Angeles, returning via Mexico to London. In San Francisco, I had been given a German artist contact in Ajijic, Mexico, the artist colony on Lake Chapala, half an hour from Guadalajara, where I was based. Although not an artist myself, I had always got on well with artists and sculptors, and so I headed first to Puerto Vallarta, having seen the film The Night of the Iguana, which had been set there, afterwards to Guadalajara, and from there to the nearby cultured, arty Ajijic. Once there, I was introduced to a middle-aged American artist called John Kenneth Peterson, known locally as Kenny. He lived in a basic, tumbling-down, small house cum studio on the lake that he rented for $25 a month most of the year, but hopped over the border to Texas to sell his paintings and have exhibitions. His paintings were inspired by the way of life he witnessed and were very professional. John invited me out for dinner to a cheap shack of a place in a colourful, narrow, cobbled street. After I had eaten the fried, greasy chicken, I was sure I would get an upset tummy, so John gave me 2 pills. I innocently swallowed one, not asking what it was, with what could have been near-fatal consequences the next day had I taken the second one, but that's for another story. John told me he was of Swedish heritage and had family with whom he corresponded. His cousins constantly invited him to northern Sweden, but he kept on delaying a visit as Sweden was so far away. He moaned. I left after the following day, but we promised to write to each other. I spent a further 6 months in Mexico, traveling around, and finally ended up, through happenstance, moving to Paris. I lived frugally as a TEFL teacher in West Hampstead, London, taking home £28 after tax each week, and never went out for dinner as I was too impoverished. John and I corresponded with blue aerograms, but I got annoyed with him as he was always writing about his Swedish relatives, inviting him to stay. Moan, 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 if only he could go, if only, if only. Finally, I'd had enough of his negativity and lambasted him. I told him frankly he was getting on in years, and if he didn't go soon, especially as he had the money, he would be dead. Follow your dreams, said I. Go. My bullying worked, and John decided to come via London for one night on the return journey after a month with his long-lost Swedish family to take me out for a special slap-up thank-you dinner. How nice, I thought, what a treat. I had a local French bistro close by where I lived on West End Green, in a red Edwardian mansion block on a 3rd floor. I salivated, just thinking and fantasizing about starting with perhaps foie gras and toasted brioche, followed by my favorite bœuf d'endaube, accompanied with rice. Being gustatory, I could almost taste the dish with a good velvety red wine to wash the tender chunks of beef down. A bottle of 1965 Alex Coton, perhaps. He arrived at tea time. excited to see me, Jilliana, his British friend. A ruddy-faced man, I suppose in his mid-50s, portly with middle-aged spread, a blotchy face and yellowish teeth. Dressed rather badly with a pinky, slightly crumpled shirt as he had just got off the plane and not yet checked into his West End hotel. He announced he wanted me to sit for my portrait and would sketch me there and then. He wouldn't have been the first. My dear friend Lyle Watson, the artist, who owned the Woodstock Gallery off Bond Street, had also sketched my portrait. We sat before dinner in my tongue and groove, pine-stained 70s kitchen diner, and sipping Earl Grey while he told me about how his relatives had welcomed him, thanks to me, Jilliana, how grateful he was that I had pushed and scolded him. Of course I was pleased, but it was getting bored, as I didn't find him a particularly interesting man, and his family sounded old-fashioned and pious church-going Lutherans in the small hamlet of 400 cottages called Gammelstad, far away from the big cities in the north of Sweden. I must have sat for over an hour, watching silently, awaiting my payment gift. A master of his art, I presumed. I watched him furiously and violently move his arm across the A4 sketch pad he had brought with him, concentrating, lost in his art. Jesus, when I finally saw myself, all he had done was a mass, or should I say a mess, of lines and squiggles. No face, no features, no eyes, a ludicrous mess of random lines that any child could have done. I later binned it when I got home after a rather dull evening. I had booked a table at my local intimate bistro, Chez Pierrot, and suggested we go there to eat. After all, I would be his guest. He then announced that he only had an American checkbook. Something was wrong with his credit card as it had been blocked, and he had to sort that out when he got home to Mexico. He carried no pounds because he was in transit and only had American Express dollar traveler's checks with him. Being innocent of money matters, I agreed I would pay on his behalf, loaning him the money. He assured me he would refund me when he got back to America by bank transfer. Stupidly, I did not take a couple of $20 checks, but I recall he had to sign them with his passport to verify the signature, and his passport was locked in his suitcase back at my flat. After all, we were friends, weren't we? I trusted him, didn't I? He knew I was a hard-out TEFL teacher. He wouldn't take advantage of a friend, would he? We ate. I paid the expensive bill. He politely said goodbye and thanked me. I never saw or heard from John K. Peterson again. Live and learn has been my motto ever since 1976. However, I was amazed to see a glowing, long, illustrated eulogy of the man and his work on the website of Lake Chapala. The novelist and Hollywood screenplay writer Ray Rigby wrote that John Peterson combines strength and violence with a forgiving hand. His flair for fantasy intermingles with reality. John Peterson's work is fun. No way, Jose.